All right, welcome back to the channel. My name is Coach Jordan Hargrave. So I've got a comment that I want to read that really captures how depersonalization and realization, which are trauma coping mechanisms, are traumatic in and of themselves. Trauma just means overwhelming stress. According to the polyvagal theory understanding of the nervous system, whenever our brain perceives threat, meaning that there's no threat, but our brain thinks that there's a threat, or if there's an actual threat, actual danger, the very first thing that we look to calm ourselves down are other people. And that's also why a big part of healing the nervous system out of these symptoms is a safe person or people that can build hope in you, a secure attachment relationship, validate your experience, etc. It's a big part of what I do with clients. But let's say that people don't calm you down, then we go into fight or flight response. And then if our nervous system feels too trapped, too overwhelmed to fight or flee, that's whenever we go into the most ancient defense mechanism, the freeze response. It's also called the trauma response. And it's at that point that you're basically playing dead from a nervous system perspective in hopes that the apex predator, let's say a lion, loses interest and walks away because predators prioritize the prey that puts up a fight. Think like a cat and a mouse. My cat Daisy is always messing with some grasshopper or whatever. And as long as the grasshopper's jumping around, Daisy will get some entertainment value and keep swatting at it. But the moment that, the grasshopper or whatever poor prey is either dead or appears to be dead, Daisy loses interest and walks away. And so at some point, there was some prey that played dead and the apex predator walked away and it survived. And this defense mechanism kind of got passed down, kind of baked into the hardware. So it's a mammalian defense mechanism. It's not even specific to humans. But just in case the predator doesn't believe that you're dead and decides to eat you, well, your nervous system has a gift for you. The gift of being separated, the gift of feeling out of body and everything feeling fake and dreamlike and time feeling distorted and your memory fragments. And these are dissociative symptoms. Dissociation comes from a Latin root word that means to sever or separate. It's actually a broad umbrella term that covers a wide range of experiences. But depersonalization and derealization are your brain separating you because your nervous system thinks that you're being eaten by a lion. But when you don't know that, and suddenly you feel out of your body, you're looking at your hands and you're like, whose are these? You're looking in the mirror and you feel like you're looking at a stranger. It's absolutely terrifying. Whenever you look at people and they feel robotic, they feel like they're not even real. You look around at your surroundings and it feels like you've slipped out of reality and are living in a dream world. There's this big, thick wall of glass between you and reality. It feels like life is a movie. Like you're in a movie theater just watching your life happen to you, but you're not integrated into the experience. You hear your own voice and it sounds like a stranger's voice. You try to think of your past and you can't remember anything, or you just feel emotionally disconnected from your past. Like, it's terrifying. And in the absence of education, our brain starts to assign all kinds of meaning to the symptoms. And especially in deep states of fight or flight response, your brain is doing something called catastrophic risk assessment, which is where your brain is feeding you with all kinds of catastrophic what if scenarios. What if this? What if this? And if you were being eaten by a lion or chased by a lion, rather, before you get eaten, catastrophic risk assessment would help you. What if the lion jumps over here? What if the lion does this? Like your body is very, very hyper vigilant. All your senses are heightened. Your brain is feeding you with all these catastrophic paranoid scenarios. That would be very advantageous in a survival context. But when there is no lion, your brain starts to catastrophize over your mental health or your physical health. What if I'm becoming schizophrenic? What if I'm becoming psychotic? What if this is permanent? What if my brain is broken? And then you go online and you see people who are stuck in this after 20, 30, 40, 50 years, which, by the way, I've got a client who's been suffering for 50 years, and she's at like 80% recovery right now. But you see these comments and you're like, okay, well, what if that's me? It appears to validate your worst catastrophic fear that your brain has given you. And then you try all these things to recover. Acceptance, distraction, random positive activities. You're like, you know what? I'll just hit the gym. I'll start doing cold plunges. Every time I clean up my diet and hit the gym, everything seems to get better, but it doesn't work. Or maybe it does work for a little bit, but then it stops working. It's very easy to become symptom obsessed and to be extremely stressed out by the symptoms. I get that. That was me. I literally went through these symptoms 2 years, 24/7, 5 years off and on. And I've been working with DPDR sufferers for the last 8 years. I understand. The symptoms are the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my life, hands down. You see my Harry Potter scar right here? Voldemort tried to get me and he couldn't. Sorry. I didn't mean to say his name out loud. That wasn't that funny. Anyway, I've got all these scars. Kids threw rocks at me. I was severely bullied, got the crap beat out of me. This is before I learned jiu-jitsu. Anyway. And of course, I've been scared a number of times in my life, like actually scary situations, and I've had a lot of hard things happen to me, not saying woe is me. I work with clients that their story makes mine seem like nothing. But out of all of that, feeling out of my body and feeling like everything was a dream was the most terrifying thing that I've ever been through in my entire life. I hated it. I hated the feeling of DPDR. It was miserable. It felt like death. And then, of course, like we've been talking about, I had all kinds of fears because of what I was reading online and because I had tried so many things to get rid of the symptoms and it wasn't working, which is probably what this person is talking about. Man like Adela, which I probably should have read the comment at the very beginning. I'm sure you probably read it. I'm terrible at these videos. Anyway, I wait until the very end to ask people to subscribe. You're supposed to do that at the beginning. Anyway. All right. Apparently, this is supposed to protect you during trauma, but being dissociated traumatizes me. It's the scariest thing I've ever experienced. And again, I hope that you read that at the beginning. I'm sure you did, but I probably should have read it. But anyway, being dissociated traumatizes me. So people become traumatized, overwhelmed by the trauma symptoms. It's very ironic. But an example that I want to use is my wife and I were driving up to this mountain that's near us. That's one of the beauties of being in Arkansas is we have a lot of mountains, and we're actually pretty close to a couple really amazing mountains. And so we'll go up there once every, 6 months or something. But my 3-year-old daughter's ears were popping on the way up there, and it's very uncomfortable. And she kept saying, Mommy, my ears, they're hurting. They're popping. What is this? And we would give her the reassurance. No, this is just what your body does whenever you're going up a mountain and down a mountain. It's normal. It's safe. It's safe. It's safe. And she's not there yet, but she'll get there where it doesn't bother her. And I've got other older daughters that their ears pop and they're like, oh, it's so cool, right? Whenever my ears pop. But by the way, I'm not saying it'll ever be cool to experience DPDR. It's not a perfect analogy. But what I'm saying is, as kids, we get taught what our body does in different situations and how to respond to that. Okay, you cut your finger? Well, guess what? Your body knows how to heal itself. We just got to wear the Band-Aid for the boo-boo, and your body will take care of it. There's all kinds of physical things that we experience, and we teach our kids how to handle it, but not with DPDR. And 1% of the population experiences DPDR 24/7. Between 50 and 75% of people will experience these symptoms at some point in their life, at least one episode. So you would think that since these are some of the most common symptoms known to mankind, that we would teach people what they are and how to respond to them. And I have my own issue with the public education system that I won't get into because I try not to go down those routes. I've got a lot of things that I don't ever talk about on here. But I think we need to know how to read and write. I think that, we need to learn how to learn. But Richard Branson, who created Virgin Mobile, Virgin Airlines, multi-billionaire, he was actually a billionaire at the time, and somebody asked him about the difference between net and gross income, and he didn't even know what that was. And he had built multi-billion-dollar companies and didn't know the difference between net and gross income. And it just goes to show you, like, I think a lot of the things that we think that we need to know, we don't need to know. But anyway, I think our kids should be literate, and I think they need to be taught how to think. I don't like individualism. I think the way to build something great is to include a lot of people, and I don't like the individualism factor. Anyway, I'm going on a rabbit trail. But it's like we teach our kids about the mitochondria of a cell and endoplasmic reticulum in division and algebra, most of which they're never going to need to know. And if they do, they can use a phone or a calculator. But yet we don't teach them about their nervous system. And I think things are shifting in this. I've seen in my kids' schools that they're starting to promote nervous system awareness, regulation, things like that. But when I was a kid, you just got labeled as certain things and put on meds instantly, which again, I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail. I'll get in trouble. But anyway, I think that we need to educate people more. And that's honestly one thing that I'm trying to do with this channel is spread some awareness of this. I can't tell you how many times a month I have somebody comment. They're like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm experiencing. And I cannot diagnose, okay? I'm a coach, seek out a licensed mental professional for diagnosis. But sharing my story, sharing basic understanding of what the symptoms are and why they happen, that alone is a prerequisite to you getting help. Because as long as you think that the symptoms are something that you need to be afraid of, that there's something that you need to fix, you're going to be a dog chasing its tail, and you're not going to be able to really get a handle on this. And so I hope that this channel, if anything, has helped spread some awareness of that for sure. But yeah, the symptoms are there to help you, even though it doesn't feel like it. They are, okay, I think the best analogy for depersonalization that I've been able to come across is they're like a car airbag. If you are in a car accident and the airbag deploys, which I've thankfully never had this happen, I hear it's very, very uncomfortable. All of a sudden, you're like this. I mean, people even get injured from the airbag. But would you rather feel the pain of the airbag or the pain of your head and body going through the windshield and possibly dying? So, again, in the appropriate context, depersonalization realization would be much more ideal than the pain of being eaten by a lion. You would, in that case, or some apex predator, whatever, or dying for any scenario where there's a lot of pain involved, you would much rather feel out of your body than in your body. You would much rather be dissociated from the material world than feel connected to the world. But outside of that context, the symptoms are absolutely terrifying, and you don't want them. And I get that. Just like, if you're driving down the street and your car airbag goes off and there's no car accident, it's like, what the heck? I only appreciate you if there's a car accident, but don't deploy if there's not a car accident. So why are the symptoms happening whenever you're not dying? At least I assume you're not dying. I assume you're not watching this in a hospital bed. I mean, I have seen that before. It was a very hard conversation. But 99.99% of the people, like, you're just trying to live your life. You're not in any physical danger. And the people that I work with, they've also been to a doctor. They've had any sort of medical or neurological issues ruled out. And while you were happy to see that there weren't any tests that came back that said that there was something wrong, like a disease or a tumor or a neurological issue, you were almost frustrated because you're like, I would almost rather there be something that I can just fix medically that would explain all of this, because everything just feels so random. It feels so subjective, but you have to understand your nervous system is being influenced by a lot of things that you're not consciously aware of, especially your sensory environment. So, and I'll bring it to a close, but whenever you have a painful experience, your brain, through something called neuroplasticity, creates an association. There's a neurological pairing, and your brain assigns the procedure of fight, flight, or even the freeze response in the body to that sensory data. Meaning, whenever you experience similar sensory data in the future, your body is going to subconsciously start going into these survival defense mechanisms. And a lot of times it starts out with just fight or flight response. But then over time, it builds and builds and builds. A neural pathway that's like a dirt road turns into a paved road. And then a paved road turns into a 2-lane highway. And then a 2-lane highway turns into a 5-lane. And then a 5-lane turns into a 10-lane highway. Because the more that a neural pathway fires, the stronger that it gets and the more efficient that it gets. That's why time going by is not fixing this. You may get better and better at dissociating and separating from your body and numbing your body, but it's not actually fixing the chaos within. But eventually, you stretch this out over a long enough period of time, and you won't be able to distract your way out of experiencing the torment in your body anymore. And that's why distraction doesn't work for a lot of people at all, because there's just too much buildup in the body. You won't be able to muscle your way through anymore, and you're going to come face to face with your body, and it's a war zone. Okay, so this would be more like a complex trauma situation. Like, let's say the cup is your body, and then the water represents stress. It builds up, builds up, builds up, and eventually you hit that overwhelm point. There is a major trauma where you could be a completely calm person and you have a situation that just totally overwhelms your ability to cope, and you go into a trauma state and DPDR can show up. But most of those people can downregulate within a month. Usually the people that have ongoing DPDR for several months or several years, if you look back at your history, you're going to find that you have a disproportionately more stressful history than most. You probably have identified as an anxious person for a long time. You've been through a disproportionate amount of stressful experiences. You may or may not have a high ACE score, which I have every one of my clients take the ACE score, or ACE test now. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Test. There's 10 questions that ask questions about things that you went through between 0 and 18, having a family member that was incarcerated, going through certain types of abuse, different things. That definitely increases the chances that you'll end up in a trauma state later on in life. But you could also have a calm childhood or early adulthood and then end up getting into very abusive environments or very stressful environments, or go through just a series of unfortunate events later on in life. So don't think that you have to have a terrible childhood to end up in severe DPDR for years and years later on in life. But I am saying it's very common that people do have that. And especially between the ages of 0 and 2, kind of the neurological template by which we're going to interpret future human experiences is being laid. And so if you have a very dysregulated caregiver, kids are codependent on their caregiver for their ability to regulate. They can't self-regulate. And so you can create a lot of neural pathways of threat association with people, just different sensory environments, your own body, at a very, very young age. And kids dissociate all the time in different ways. Think about how easily a kid can be overwhelmed whenever they don't have the ability to self-regulate. And sometimes my clients will start to look back and like, you know what, as a kid, I did do this and I did this, as a way. I realize now it was a way to dissociate. And maybe even DPDR shows up for kids, right? But maybe daydreaming, just doing things to stay in their head. If that was there whenever you were a kid, then the pathway is already laid. It's a lot easier to go into DPDR or even just to dissociate in general if you've already got those pathways laid early on in life, for sure, or just at some point in your history, even if it's after 18. Okay, so anyway, with that being said, the symptoms are safe, they are appropriate, and what's happening is your body is going into the right state just at the wrong time. Again, primarily because of sensory triggers. And so we don't need to get rid of DPDR. We need to heal your nervous system. We need to befriend the body. We need to make your body your safe place again. That's the primary purpose of DPDR, is to separate you from your body. Okay. And if you want to know what those 5 shifts are that you need to make, I've created a free 5 shifts masterclass. First pinned comment, link in description. It will show you the 5 shifts that you need to make, whether you work with me or whoever. Human to human, I want you to feel better. Okay. That masterclass is going to equip you with the knowledge that you need. And so, with that being said, and also follow this channel. I talk about the basics of recovery all the time, and I hope that this is a resource for you. Okay. Smash the like button. Help me get this out into the algorithm. Subscribe, join this family if you're needing some help with anxiety, panic, DPDR. Nobody seems to understand what you're going through and you're frustrated. You want to be connected to a channel where the people on this channel understand what you're going through, can validate your experience. We'd love to have you, okay? That is it. I'll talk to you real soon.